"Can I still wait?" said a small voice in the back of my mind. We were celebrating our 2-year marriage anniversary. I was excited to celebrate it with him, even if it was in a small room together with many other people visiting their fathers and brothers and boyfriends. But how many years can I still do this? Can I wait for him to get out? It started when I met my husband in a nightclub. I was 20 years old at the time. I was working the late shift, and while we knew each other, we never spoke until that one day. He had asked me for a drink, and I sat down next to him. Oddly enough, he kept picking on me until I had enough and walked off briskly. Now that I look back, he was just being cheeky to get my attention. But boy, was I annoyed at that time. A few weeks had passed, and he had asked me to dinner, and I said yes. He knew it was my 21st birthday. He had bought me the most beautiful dress with a jacket to suit and had me wear them for our date. It was such a lovely surprise, and I was smiling ear to ear. From there, our relationship grew abnormally fast. Not long after our first dinner date, we were driving to his house for the first time when he told me that he has 2 daughters that he and his mom raised together. His ex had become a drug addict and left him to take care of their daughters by himself. At first, I thought he was joking, but then he showed me photos of them. I was incredibly nervous and was thinking how they would react when they see me. That time finally came, and surprisingly, both girls liked me. I was relieved, although I did have a bit of a trouble with the younger girl who tested me many times. Deep down, she was afraid I would just leave them like her mom. But I just kept persisting with showing her affection, that I'm sticking around by doing things such as helping with school projects and taking her to school interviews. We are very close now, luckily. I started to really fall in love with him. He has such a big heart and will always go out of his way to help somebody, even if it lands him in trouble or out of money. He is extremely generous and a lot more considerate than most. I'd always felt so safe and secure with him by my side, especially when it comes to decision making. 3 months passed until he sat me down in his bedroom, and he asked me if he could ask a serious question. "What would you like to ask?" I said, a bit concerned. "Would you like to stay with me?" he said softly. Relieved from my concern that he'd share some bad news, I jumped up and said, "Yes!" He gave a ring and gave it to me with a big smile. We hugged and couldn't be any happier, or so I thought. A few weeks later, he said he needed to tell me something. He opened up about a continuing court case from years ago he was involved in, a court case which could potentially mean jail time. The prosecutor never had solid evidence of my husband committing any crimes, but the circumstantial evidence could be sufficient in Australian court. It all started 3 years prior to us meeting and only chose to tell me now. I still don't really know why he never told me earlier, but probably out of the fear of losing me. Months had passed and my fiancé's behavior started changing for the worse. He started going out more and more while expecting me to stay home with his kids. It started with 1 night a week, and then 2, then 4 to 5 days a week. He always came home so late, and most times I would be awake, waiting for him because I was always worried. Whenever I used to call him, his phone would always be off. He started becoming angrier and angrier, which affected not only our relationship, but his children too. What had happened to this loving and caring man? Why did he start treating me this way, and why couldn't we deal with his problems together? But I was young, and I felt I was only doing the right thing by trying to make my man happy. Isn't that what a happy relationship was all about? I saw that his anger was derived from actual stress and fear he had inside of him. I knew he was suffering. I knew he was scared, and I wanted to help make his lifestyle easier in the hope he would try to relax and take things as they come. I thought I was his superhero that could make everything better. At one point, we even impulsively decided to elope, just the 2 of us, and came back married. We only had a witness, no other people. We agreed to plan a big wedding after his trial was over. He assured me he would be proven innocent. I was so happy that he still chose me even though times were tough. The next day, we received a phone call from his lawyer, and he told us a date. 19th of February. It's November now. This is when the pressure really kicked in. We were newlyweds, but had the outlook of him in jail in only 3 months' time. His behavior started to get even worse. The going out at night with his friends became 2 to 3 days long with no contact. He would just simply shut me and the kids out of his life. Now, looking back, I understand that this was his way of coping with the possibility of jail and being away from his daughters and wife. He was suffering in a terrible way, yet always convinced me that things will work out and he will be free. But what if he wasn't? Why didn't he spend the few months with us? Quality time with the family. Then there was me, a young woman barely in her 20s, looking after his kids with his mom, taking them to school, juggling my job, my social life. Things started to take a toll on me, while at the same time my husband was the angriest and the most stressed I had ever seen him. My friends and family declared me crazy to stay with him. They saw the situation as a young girl being involved with a criminal. They constantly told me to stand up for myself and chose a different life. I was judged a lot and had a lot of critical comments made, but I loved him and I trusted him. I knew that much. Despite all the disrespectful comments and unfair rumors, I just said what I believed. He was innocent. The trial date had arrived. He did not say a single word to me as I drove us to court. My ears turned red as I tried to suppress my tears. I was terrified. We walked in, and for 11 days, his case was being discussed and addressed via a judge and jury members. It was an excruciating experience for both of us, the girls and the mom. The prosecutor painted my husband into a corner. It was so infuriating to hear him speak as if it was so clear and obvious that my husband was guilty. Yet, the evidence was shaky at best. The jury's lack of attention was also frustrating. On the 4th day of trial, I even spotted one of the jury members snoring at the panel. The trial went on, and every day we inched further away from the finish line. Every day, it looked more likely we were going to lose. The last day finally arrived. I so desperately wanted to talk to my husband, hold him and tell him that no matter what, I believed him and would be there for him. But all my husband said was, "Do not talk to me, do not even look at me." I was hysterical but silent. I was driving about to park my car when he said this. I remember staring deeply into my wrists that had turned white from holding the steering wheel too tightly. Tears kept streaming from my face, yet I did not make the slightest sound and turned my head slightly away. He got out of the car and stormed off, and that's when I broke down. Why did he push me away? Did he want me to leave him and choose another life? I had to clean myself up quickly because court started in 10 minutes and I still had to walk to the courthouse after parking. That was truly terrible. I knew deep down he was going to be taken away, so those words crushed me. It took me so much effort to walk through those heavy doors again, and knowing that there probably will be a result at the end of the day. As soon as I walked into the room and saw the police officers in the back, I knew what was going down. My heart was beating so loud, I thought somebody else would hear it too. He got 10 years jail sentence, 7 without parole. As the police officers took him away, I had to remain strong for his daughters who had burst out in tears next to me. Not only that, 3 women jury members left the room crying too. One of them even went to my husband's lawyer and told him she was uncomfortable with the decision. I was so angry when I found out because the rule was for the jury members to agree with each other 100%. This was so unfair. I felt so angry and so powerless. His daughters were 8 and 9 at the time. I tried to explain what had happened to their father in the best way that I could. I explained I and their grandmother would take care of them now. They just nodded, remaining silent. As I was explaining to his daughters, the conviction and 10 years started to trickle into my reality. Can we do this? Can I wait this long? Did he really commit these crimes? Was I wrong about him? These questions kept spinning in my head, and the worst part was that we didn't hear from him for about 3 days. They had to relocate him and settle him to a correctional facility and didn't allow any outside contact. It took 72 hours until we got the chance to speak again. And all I could hear were his last words. "Don't talk to me or even look at me." For the first week or so, my sister-in-law, Sandra, would come over every night and always would speak to the girls and myself about how we feel and what we thought would happen next. She was a very big help during this transition. Thankfully, also, by the time this happened, the girls and I had become very close, almost like best friends. So we helped each other as best as we could. As for my mother-in-law and I, we too get along very well, which made this new journey a lot easier than I expected. My new reality at 23 years old was living with his girls, my mother-in-law, all in a big house together while my husband was a convicted criminal in a correctional center 5 hours away from home. I visit him every 2 weeks. He gets too worried about me driving the kids, so I usually do these journeys alone. My mother-in-law does not drive either, so I'm doing what I can to balance my life as well as theirs too. At the beginning, I constantly got comments from my friends and family asking why I haven't left him. If I can handle this, if I can imagine myself in the same situation 5 years from now, when new people I encounter ask me about my personal life or where my husband is, I think fast and decide just how honest I want to be. Will people be respectful if I tell them that my husband is incarcerated? I don't know how many anxiety attacks, terrible thoughts, and tears that I've shed since this whole journey. I remain convinced of his innocence, but I still can't answer the question that rings in my ear. Can I wait? There is a silver lining though. An appeal is coming in a couple of months, so I'm praying for nothing but the best results. I remain convinced of his innocence. May all my sacrifices be worth it during these times. The only way I have been managing is to take this one day at a time. I also understand that my husband is doing time and needs all the support and love. I'm also doing time on the outside, but my love for him remains strong. This is my story, and I hope this shows that jail stories are not only about criminals themselves. There is another side that most people rarely think about, like families suffering and doing time. They also need all the understanding, love, and support that they can get.